So picture this, Burkina Faso, landlocked nation in West Africa, right? Rich in history, culture, and, as it turns out, a whole lot of gold. But also a place that's seen its fair share of, let's call them leadership transitions. Enter Captain Ibrahim Traore. He's young, he's got a vision, and in September 2022, he didn't just knock on the door of power, he kind of kicked it in, respectfully of course, if a coup can ever be respectful. It's like that moment in a movie where the quiet guy in the back suddenly stands up and says, "I think I have a better idea," and everyone just goes with it. Because, frankly, the old ideas weren't exactly setting the world on fire, especially when it came to peace and prosperity for the average Burkinabe citizen who was tired of the status quo. Now why the big change? Well, things weren't exactly rosy. Imagine your country is dealing with serious security issues, like extremist groups making life miserable for too many people, and you feel like the folks in charge are, shall we say, not quite acing the test. That's the kind of vibe that was brewing. Captain Traore, who was just 34 at the time. Yeah, 34, an age when most of us are still figuring out how to properly fold a fitted sheet, stepped onto the scene. He wasn't just some random soldier, he had been on the front lines, leading troops against these very insurgents. He saw the problems up close, and clearly, he thought the solutions needed a radical shakeup, a complete reset of the system. His arrival wasn't subtle, it was a statement. This wasn't just another military takeover for the sake of it, or so the narrative went. This was framed as a move for national salvation, a chance to steer the ship away from the rocks it seemed determined to hit. Think of it like your favorite sports team firing the coach mid-season because things are just bad. Except in this case, the coach is the government, and the new coach is a captain with a very clear, very bold game plan. He wasn't just talking about tweaking a few policies, he was talking about fundamentally changing how Burkina Faso operates in the world and for its own people, which is a pretty ambitious goal, you have to admit. And the first big play? A clear signal that the old ways of doing things, especially the deep-rooted ties with former colonial powers like France, were up for a serious review. It was like saying to your very influential long-term landlord, "You know what? I think I want to redecorate, and maybe find some new roommates." This anti-Western stance became a hallmark of his early leadership, sending ripples not just through West Africa but across international diplomatic channels. People started paying attention, wondering if this young leader could actually pull off what he was promising, a more sovereign, more self-reliant Burkina Faso. A tall order, but hey, you don't get to be captain without a bit of audacity. So, Captain Traore takes the wheel, right? And one of the first things he does is look at his country's international friend list and go, maybe we need to diversify our portfolio a bit. It's like when you realize you've been ordering from the same pizza place for 10 years, and suddenly you discover there's sushi, and Thai food, and maybe even that new Ethiopian place everyone's talking about. Burkina Faso, under Traore, decided it was time to explore other options beyond its traditional Western partners, particularly France. This wasn't just a casual breakup, it was a conscious uncoupling, with Burkina Faso, alongside neighbors Mali and Niger, forming the Alliance of Sahel States. They even said au revoir to ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States, basically the region's big economic club. And who are these intriguing new friends on Burkina Faso's dance card? Well, step right up, Russia and China. It's a geopolitical shift that's got everyone talking. Traore made a notable visit to Moscow in May 2025, just a few weeks ago in fact, for the 80th anniversary of the Soviet victory over Nazi Germany. President Putin was there and promises of cooperation were made. We're talking about various sectors, and get this, Russia is even set to build a nuclear plant in Burkina Faso. Yes, a nuclear plant. It's a bold move, signaling a very different kind of partnership, moving beyond just asking for aid to engaging in significant infrastructure and energy projects with new global players. Then there's the money, honey, specifically gold. Burkina Faso has a lot of it, like billions of dollars worth. For years, like many resource-rich African nations, much of that wealth didn't fully benefit the country itself. Traore's government looked at this and said, hold up, this gold is. So they started nationalizing gold mines, 3 of them to be precise, and they didn't stop there. They're building a gold refinery because why just export the raw stuff when you can process it at home and get more value? They've even nationalized gold exports and put a ban on shipping out the raw, unprocessed product. It's like deciding to bake your own bread instead of just selling the flour. The big idea behind all this? Economic independence. That's the holy grail. Traore's administration has made it clear. they're not looking for handouts from the World Bank or the International Monetary Fund anymore. They believe Burkina Faso can stand on its own 2 feet, using its own resources to fund its own development. This is a massive gamble, a declaration that they're ready to chart their own economic course, away from the conditions and prescriptions that often come with international loans. It's about saying, we appreciate the advice, but we're going to try it our way now, which is a sentiment many nations, especially former colonies, can probably understand quite deeply. Now, changing your international friends and taking control of your gold is one thing. But what about the folks at home? Captain Traore's government didn't forget about them. In fact, they rolled out some pretty interesting domestic reforms pretty quickly. First up, a little something for the government officials themselves, a pay cut. Ministers saw their salaries slashed by 30%. Ouch for them maybe, but it sends a message, right? And on the flip side, civil servants got a 50% pay increase. It's like the government saying, we're tightening our belts at the top so we can better support the engine room of the country. It's a move designed to boost morale and perhaps curb corruption, showing that the sacrifices start from the leadership. Then there's the push for self-sufficiency in everyday things. Burkina Faso started building facilities to produce generic drugs. Think about that, making your own medicine instead of relying on expensive imports. That's huge for healthcare accessibility. They also ramped up production of cement, flour, and even started processing tomatoes and cotton locally. It's about creating jobs, sure, but it's also about reducing dependency. They've distributed agricultural resources to farmers and are even expanding wheat production, which is a big deal for food security. It's the practical, on-the-ground stuff that can make a real difference in people's lives, moving from big ideas to tangible outputs. And you can't talk about development without talking about infrastructure. The government has been busy here too. They're establishing mobile clinics to bring healthcare closer to remote communities. New highways are being built, connecting different parts of the country, which is crucial for trade and national unity. And there's even a new airport in the works, named the Thomas Sankara Airport, a nod to a very influential past leader which we'll get to. These aren't just vanity projects, they are the arteries and veins of a functioning economy, enabling goods and people to move, and services to be delivered more efficiently across the nation. Of course, not everyone is sending Traore a congratulatory fruit basket. The United States, for example, has voiced some concerns. General Michael Langley, the commander of U.S. Africa Command, AFRICOM, wasn't too thrilled about how Burkina Faso is using its gold reserves. He suggested back in April 2025 that these resources were being used more to protect the junta than to benefit the public or fight terrorism. Langley also argued that the junta's focus on regime protection over tackling the insurgency threat was actually making things worse in the Sahel, allowing extremist groups to expand. It's that classic international tension. One leader's bold national project is another's regional security concern. To really understand Captain Traore, you have to look back a bit, to another charismatic leader who once captured the imagination of Burkina Faso, Thomas Sankara. Sankara was the country's Marxist-oriented president from 1983 to 1987, and his legacy looms large. He focused on healthcare, education, land reform, and women's equality revolutionary stuff at the time, and still pretty radical. Traore openly draws inspiration from him. It's like having a political hero you're trying to emulate, but in a 21st century context. This connection to Sankara gives Traore a certain revolutionary cachet, a link to a past that many Burkinabe remember with pride and a sense of unfinished business. Traore himself isn't just a military man who stumbled into power. He studied geology at the University of Ouagadougou, so he literally knows the ground his country stands on. During his university days, he was reportedly involved in a Marxist student association, which tells you something about his early ideological leanings. He then served in a UN peacekeeping force in Mali, and, as we know, led troops against jihadist insurgents in Burkina Faso. This isn't a man who's new to the region's complex challenges or unfamiliar with different approaches to governance and societal organization. His background paints a picture of someone with both intellectual grounding and hard-earned practical experience on the battlefield. All these bold moves, the anti-Western rhetoric, the Sankara comparisons, they've contributed to what some observers have called the cult of Saint Traore. It suggests he's achieved an almost mythical status among his supporters. They see him as a savior, the one who's finally standing up to foreign powers and reclaiming the nation's dignity and resources. It's easy to see why that narrative is powerful, especially for a young population yearning for change and a brighter future. When you feel like you've been dealt a bad hand for a long time, someone who promises to reshuffle the deck can look like a messiah, even if the path ahead is uncertain. But let's be real, the challenges facing Burkina Faso are immense. This is a country that relies heavily on exporting natural resources like gold and cotton, which can be a volatile economic base. Life expectancy is low, infant mortality is high, and malnutrition is widespread. These are deep-seated developmental issues that can't be solved overnight, no matter how charismatic the leader. Building a truly self-reliant Burkina Faso, free from external interference and internal strife, is a monumental task. Captain Traore has set a bold course, but the journey is fraught with peril, both from within and without. The world is watching to see if this captain can indeed steer his nation to calmer, more prosperous waters.